Welcome to Dual Lane School webinar. DualLaneSchool.org started as a grassroots movement to support California Proposition 50A and the Seal Biodiversity movement. Today, our mission is to promote dual lane school education and support our community. Reflecting the recent unrest in Washington, D.C., we truly believe the dual lane school will help our future generation understand each other and bring people together. We need the support to make that happen. Currently, there are 18,000 world language programs in the United States, but only 3,000 dual language programs in the elementary school. We really believe there's an equity issue, and we need more people to get involved, support, and spread the message about dual language education so we can have more quality dual language education in the United States. At last, we really want to thank Cal, especially Joel and Lisa, to make today's event happen. I would like to introduce DualLaneSchool.org Assistant Editor Lauren Harris. Lauren.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lauren Harris, and as Arthur mentioned, I'm the Assistant Editor at DualLanguageSchools.org, and I will be your host for the duration of today's webinar. I'd like to discuss a few logistics. First, please keep your microphone muted and ensure that your name matches the name on your Zoom account so that we can effectively check you in. Please know that we will be recording this session, so if you would not like your video to be included, then please keep your camera off. Leticia Trower will be monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and if there's time for a Q&A, then we will answer a few questions at the end of the session. Additionally, we do have many webinars coming up during 2021, including in February with Guerra Loco and March with Sandra Mercuri and Vivian Prats. To register, please visit the events calendar on the website. I also want to make you aware that the Teacher of the Month nomination form for 2021 is about to close. So if you would like to nominate one of your colleagues for this honor, please head to the website where you can find the form as soon as possible. This is the time where many educators are considering starting new dual language programs for the following year. DualLanguageSchools.org recently revised our dual language school guide to start a successful dual language program with a new Facebook group, New Dual Language Programs Network. This is a free 7-week program helping you to plan and grow your new dual language school. We encourage you to go to our website and Facebook to find out more information. I would now like to introduce you to our incredible sponsor, Trey Calvin of California Applied Linguistics, who will be introducing our speakers.
Hey, thanks, Lauren, and welcome everybody, the 300 or so and counting participants that are rolling in on this Thursday afternoon. My name is Trey Calvin. I'm here to welcome you to this special collaborative webinar hosted by our wonderful friends at DualLanguageSchools.org and, of course, us at the Center for Applied Linguistics. During this time, we'll be discussing one of the 3 pillars supporting a well-rounded, successful, and impactful dual language program. First, I'd like to start by thanking DualLanguageSchools.org for this event and for giving us the opportunity to share with you more about the guiding principles for dual language education, 3rd edition. In particular, I want to shout out to Leticia, Arthur, Jonathan Ruiz, and Lauren, who are on this call to make this possible. So again, my name is Trey Calvin. I'm the Communications Director at CAL, the Center for Applied Linguistics. And I would like to have the honor, if you would allow me, of introducing 2 of our expert panelists that will lead us on our journey today. First, though, I want to talk about the Center for Applied Linguistics. We were founded in 1959 by a gentleman named Charles A. Ferguson. Today, we are a global nonprofit research center employing nearly 60 staff members working to promote language, learning, and cultural understanding by serving as a trusted source for research, policy analysis, professional development, services, and information like this webinar today. CAL's earned an international reputation for its contributions in many fields. If you can go to the next slide, where we've listed some of those. And through our work in policy and programmatic aspects of different sorts of programs across the United States and globally, we seek solutions to issues involving language and culture as they relate to access, equity, and social justice in societies and education around the world. Dual language programs, as many of you know, serve as social incubators for the kind of sociocultural introspection that is so greatly needed in our society today. And that's why we thought it would be appropriate for our topic to be the third pillar, sociocultural competence. Sociocultural competence, other than being a mouthful to say, has been defined and redefined over the years, from positive self-esteem to cultural awareness to cultural identity to critical consciousness. In any case, it is a critical component built into every dual language program and instruction for a reason. So again, I have the distinct honor of introducing two of my esteemed colleagues from the Center for Applied Linguistics, who today will help us examine the ways that dual language staff, students, families, and communities can adopt these practices so that we can start to move the needle on access and equity. Beatrice, let me see you wave so everybody can see you. I think you're at the top of my screen. Beatrice, Dr. Beatrice Arias is a senior research scientist at the Center for Applied Linguistics. She's previously served as the vice president for development at Cal from 2011 to 2017. She is an emeritus professor at Arizona State University, and during her tenure at ASU, she directed the Center for Bilingual Education and Research, served as the principal investigator for several U.S. Department of Education grants, mentored doctoral students, directed teacher preparation programs, and has worked extensively with teachers and administrators serving emerging bilingual students in local school districts. I would also like to welcome my other esteemed colleague from Cal, Lisa Tabacu. Say hi there, Lisa. Lisa returned to Cal after a brief hiatus in 2018 to serve as the Director of Global Languages and Cultures. Lisa was the director and assistant director of pre-K through 12 ELL professional development at Cal from 2008 to 2013. Lisa has over 30 years of experience in helping to educate our students, diverse backgrounds, languages, and cultures. While at Cal, she has developed educational materials and provided professional development on effective and culturally responsive instruction for English learners, especially on the topic of teaching reading to students and learning to read in a second language, as well as on the development of academic language. Lisa's knowledge and skills are grounded in many years of serving in an urban high poverty school district. And over the course of her career, she has directly taught ELs in grades pre-K through 12. As she has served in a variety of roles addressing English language education in the District of Columbia Public Schools as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to them, and I want to say thank you, duallanguageschools.org once again. Thank you to Cal for making this possible. Thank you to Lisa and Dr. Arias for hosting us today.
Thank you, Trey. So yes, I'm Lisa, and I welcome everyone. How exciting this is. Oh my goodness, we have so many people from all around the country and around, even from outside of the US, who are here because they are devoted to dual language education programs. Oh my goodness, it is wonderful. I wanted to also say that I had put up this slide about our upcoming institutes too, because Trey has just been fabulous in helping Cal to ensure that we get our message out about the many things that Cal is doing. And we wanted everybody to know up front that we offer these institutes, and we'll be providing information about it in a handout with other resource links as part of our presentation today. So let's go ahead and begin. We're here to talk about sociocultural competence as the third pillar of, but probably the most important pillar of the guiding principles for dual language education and of dual language programs. So Beatrice created a cute slide about how we're, going to be, okay, we're looking at, well, I'll just take the screen back. And I just mentioned Beatrice. Okay, so there we go. Beatrice, I'm going to go ahead and introduce through the polls, and then we'll have you come in. Is that okay?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. My good friend and colleague, Beatrice. I'm so happy to be doing this with Beatrice because there are very few people as qualified as she is to be talking about this subject. We're taking a dive into the guiding principles from the perspective of sociocultural competence. Our webinar will include sociocultural competence defined, but from the perspective of dual language education programs. We're going to look at how sociocultural competence is presented in the guiding principles. And then we're going to look at critical pedagogy resources for particularly the curriculum strand, because we believe that does not get the attention that it may need in our programs, and how important that is considering the events of just last week. Okay, and if we have time, hopefully we'll have some questions. We encourage you to enter your thoughts and contributions in the chat box as we move along. In fact, we'll have one poll and then we'll be seeking your interaction in the chats. Okay, so we're going to start with a poll because we want to know what sociocultural competence means to you in the context of dual language education, and who you think has the greatest need for sociocultural competence. So we've started the poll. What does the term sociocultural competence mean to you? And then when we have enough responses, my companion will close the room and we'll share.
Thank you, Lisa. Those votes are still coming in. We just hit 50%. I think if we give it just another 30 seconds, we'll have pretty close to 100%. And then we'll share out the responses so everyone can see them.
Perfect. Thank you. Wow, this is exciting. We have folks who are very eager to participate. I love that too.
Okay, so I know that we don't like waiting, but these votes are still coming in very fast. I think it's just the matter of the fact that we have several hundred people participating today. But it looks like they're slowing down a little bit now. We just hit about 82%. So I'm going to go ahead and end the polling, and I'll share those results out so everyone can see what the group said.
Okay, so can everyone see it now? Okay, great. So you were able to choose multiple choices and not just one. But what do we see here? That the area that got the most votes, so to speak, is understanding and affirming cultural identities. Woohoo! I like that one. And what came in second? Cross-cultural understanding, taking action for equity and social justice, developing critical consciousness, and then cultural appreciation. Okay, cool. All right, we can stop sharing that one, Leticia, and we can move to the second poll. It's about who has the greatest need for sociocultural competence in our dual language programs. And we encourage you to participate, and as many as you want. Whoa, look at you go. Fabulous. Okay, and this is kind of a trick question, isn't it? You probably already figured that out. Okay, since it is kind of a trick question, Leticia, I think we can go ahead and end the polling.
Sure, so it looks like we have about 83% of results in, and I'll go ahead
and sorry
share the results.
if you didn't vote, but we have a lot to share today. So, okay, so you're sharing? So, I mean, this is fairly even. And Beatrice and I were thinking, you know, sociocultural competence is for everyone. And everyone in our programs needs to be socioculturally competent. Thanks for interacting with us in this way. And we're going to move on to the next slide, and which Beatrice is going to take over for a bit. So Beatrice, can you start
Thank
sharing
you,
with us
Lisa.
about the guiding principles? Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Well, for a little while this afternoon, I'm going to share with you an overview of the guiding principles for dual language education. Looks like this, and hopefully you're familiar with it. But we're going to be talking about the third edition, and we call it affectionately GP3, because there were two other editions in 2005 and 2007. And Cal has a long legacy of providing professional development, resources, institutes for the field of dual language education. And so as our authors first developed the guiding principles first edition in 2005, and then the field continued to grow. In 2017, our authors and others thought it was time to update the guiding principles, especially with a focus on the third pillar, sociocultural competence. So what I wanted to, this is getting in the way here. So what I wanted you all to know is that you can access your own copy of the guiding principles for free by going to www.cal.org/GP3, and you will have your own copy of the guiding principles. All right, so now that you know a little bit about the context in which we developed it, I can go to the next slide, right? All right, so we're all familiar with the pillars of dual language education, hopefully. Bilingualism and biliteracy, high academic achievement, and sociocultural competence. This first pillar is the focus on bilingualism and biliteracy. And here I wanted to emphasize that when we talk about dual language programs, we're not just talking about one classroom. We're talking about a program that extends and articulates usually from K to 5th or 6th grade, and now middle school, and now secondary school. So when we're talking about the goal of bilingualism, we're talking about students who across the curriculum are able to develop their bilingual skills, and perhaps will be able to take the Seal of Biliteracy test at the end, so that they can continue to get credit for their bilingualism. So that's important to recognize about the first pillar, bilingualism and biliteracy. In the second pillar, high academic achievement, we recognize that students are also able to achieve high academic performance in both languages, so that across the curriculum from K6 or whatever the grades are, content area courses will be provided in the target language, social studies, math, special education, and very importantly, that students are assessed in the two languages. We are aware that it's very difficult sometimes and costly to be able to do assessment in two languages. But that's the proof of the pudding. That's how we know that the students have been able to achieve in both program languages. And then the third pillar, the sociocultural competence, has gone through a variety of definitions over the years. And so because of that, it may be that we have less research findings about the effectiveness of sociocultural competence. Also because sociocultural competence not only focuses on an individual student, but on the teachers and the administrators and the parents in that program. So when we speak of sociocultural competence, we're speaking program-wide. And that's going to be a significant number of persons who are involved in the program. So that when the Guiding Principles 3rd edition was refreshed, all strands were refreshed with the goal of identifying sociocultural competence in each of them. So as I mentioned earlier, and I think Trey mentioned earlier also, there have been many definitions of sociocultural competence. And so a narrow one was attitudes, students' attitudes, demonstrating positive attitudes and behaviors towards speakers of the target language. And this was very important, and it still continues to be important because we want very much to help develop students' attitudes, understanding, and tolerance for differences and for linguistic variation. But over the years, the terms have been cross-cultural appreciation, sociocultural competence, cross-cultural understanding. And then little by little, new aspects of these features started to become integrated into sociocultural competence. The idea of high self-esteem, that students had a good sense of self because of their proficiency and capacity in both languages. And then also their development of identity. And identity has recently become very important. And as we can see from the movements recently of Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, that developing identity is crucial to having an understanding of yourself with respect to others. So, next slide. Ta-da. So now I'm going to kind of segue into a little thumbnail sketch of those scholars who have kind of laid the groundwork for what we're talking about as sociocultural competence in the Guiding Principles. And it is multidimensional, and it is, as I said earlier, encompassing the whole program. So you're probably familiar with James Banks, who is called the father of multicultural education. And he talked about dimensions of multicultural education. And these dimensions are very similar to what we have integrated into the strands of Guiding Principles. So that here where we look at the strands, next slide, we see these 5 components of multicultural education. And content integration really refers to the use of materials that are multicultural and resources that are multicultural. And Lisa will later address a whole series of multicultural resources that we've identified. And then knowledge construction refers to instruction and how teachers help students develop their critical thinking and and question their cultural assumptions. Prejudice reduction has to do with students' attitudes towards others, and we work on prejudice reduction in dual language programs. We also talk about an equity pedagogy where teachers make sure that regardless of where students are, they have equitable access to the curriculum. Equitable access is different from giving the same thing to everybody, but it's making sure that everybody has equitable access given their background and their achievement. And then in empowering school culture, we think of schools that are inclusive and invite the community to participate and be part of their program. So in these ways, multicultural education is foundational to our sociocultural understanding of sociocultural competence. Okay. So as I've been saying, I think sociocultural competence goes beyond awareness of various cultures to an important development of self-awareness. And recently, researchers have been saying we need to look at dual language programs as a step to develop a student's own cultural understanding and how they see themselves in the world. Other scholars that take this perspective include Gloria Ladson Billings, who did research with African-American teachers who were using culturally relevant resources, ways of speaking, curriculum materials, students' funds of knowledge to help students achieve at a grade level. And she called this a culturally relevant pedagogy that affirms the student's cultural identity. Many of us are familiar with Luis Moll, and for Luis, sociocultural competence is the development of confianza. Once again, we have this community orientation to sociocultural competence, where we're looking at how the students and the teachers and the parents and the administrators all come together to create the school climate, to create a place where students are respected and there exists this trust between all students. And then finally, for Django Paris, he speaks of culturally sustaining pedagogy. So we can kind of see a clear line from Gloria Ladson Billings, who talks about culturally relevant. So let's make it relevant, to Django, who says, well, let's make it sustaining. And so we want these components of the cultural pedagogy to sustain students throughout their experience in schools. So all this is to say that there has been research that focuses on the the area of sociocultural competence, which focuses on attitudes. And we have robust literature when sociocultural competence was conceptualized as attitudes. That was a little easier to address rather than trying to figure out if the whole program reflects sociocultural competence. So these areas of research on the third goal have been found to be effective. that dual language programs foster an appreciation and pride in multiple cultures, that dual language programs promote awareness of linguistic and cultural variation, that dual language programs use the study of language and study of culture in mutual reinforcing ways, and that dual language programs promote integration of language and cultural content through cultural themes. Let me show you how some of this research has rolled out. In 2001, Catherine Lindholm Leary, who's done an extensive amount of research on dual language programs and students' achievement, developed an attitude scale to help see how students responded. And so the attitude scale was a Likert scale, so like from a little bit to a lot. And the questions posed were, does learning another language help me get along better with others? And do I want to learn a language to become friends with someone who mostly speaks a non-English language? And students in dual language programs were found to have very positive attitudes in this way. But we are proposing that we need to expand the area of attitudes to be more inclusive of the entire program for sociocultural competence to be considered. So these are the strands that are displayed and reviewed in the guiding principles. Each strand is preceded by a literature review that shows its relevance and efficaciousness in dual language programs. We have these seven programs, and I lost my screen. And now, okay.
Okay, sorry, Beatrice. I'm just have to get it up again because it was on the notes page. I was just informed and I didn't know that. So I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It'll take just a second, but they're the 7 strands that you were speaking to, and I'll pull that up again. Okay.
So it's the last slide that will speak to has to do with an example of how each strand emphasizes a sociocultural facet. So next.
Okay.
The next slide.
I feel like I'm in the dark here. I'm trying to figure out whether I'm sharing or not. I'm so sorry, everyone. Okay. Let's see. Do you want to stop? Yes. And I want to share this. Share. Okay, can people see my screen? I can't even tell.
Well, we're here.
Yes.
The penultimate slide. I need to get to the last slide.
Okay, all right.
But I don't have any control over the
yeah,
slides.
I know. Here we
There
go.
we go.
And somehow
Okay. Yay.
Sorry.
Such a novice here. So these are examples of how each strand reflects a sociocultural component. So in the program area, the program promotes cultural equity. In the curriculum area, we spoke about the curriculum being representative of all students. In the instruction strand, the instruction includes a variety of strategies that teachers use. Assessment, a very important area, one that we need to work on in dual language. Assessment includes assessment in both languages. Staff, there's a whole strand on staff, are selected who commit to the program goals. There is a positive school climate where families are welcome to the school. You can have different indicators for seeing how welcome the community is. And then finally, in terms of resources, the program has equitable access to school and district resources, a very important aspect also. So that's my brief overview of the components of the Guiding Principles 3rd edition. And now Lisa will take over to talk about the practice, sociocultural practices. Lisa.
Beatrice, you're going to, I don't know, I'm going to owe you one after this, oh, okay. So I hope everyone can see this screen, and thank you so much, Dr. Arias. We're okay with seeing the screen, and you can hear me, Beatrice, is that correct?
I can. I just
Okay, and
can't
you can see the screen.
control the
Okay,
slide.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have to control the slides, so I'm going to
Okay.
control them for
All right.
myself, I hope. And
Okay.
again, welcome to everyone who's here. It's fabulous. Dr. Arias had also found a wonderful set of resources that go with the with sociocultural competence overall and culturally responsive education. And so wanted to share this with you too, these resources from New America. Know that we have, and I think probably Leticia has put it into the chat box several times already. We have resources, a handout of resources that goes with the presentation and the resources that we're going to be sharing. But now we're going to turn to the guiding principles from the perspective of what does it really look like? In each of the strands, if we are practicing sociocultural competence, what does that look like? Okay. So I would really enjoy if you all could help me a little bit by putting in the chat to be somewhat more interactive. When the phrase comes to mind, sociocultural competence in the program structure strand. And I know so many of you are very familiar already with the guiding principles. So program structure is really the design of the program and the basics of the program. And if you can think of a word or phrase that comes to mind, that would be fabulous. I see linguistic equity. And I'm gonna, I would enjoy very much if you go ahead and just put these things in the chat as I debrief, just in the essence of time, so that we're all contributing to the conversation, but I'm going to have to continue with the slides. So if we look at what it says in the guiding principles, sociocultural competence is absolutely a part. Let's make sure everyone is muted who needs to be. Thanks so much. The development of sociocultural competence is part of the program design. The program ensures equity in what ways? Access to resources, linguistic equity, cultural equity, high quality instruction in both languages. And if we want to think about what does this look like in practice? Well, it's a program in which we're seeing that, for example, certain students aren't bused in to a far distant school in order to serve as language models, right? We're seeing a program that's developed so that the language allocation plan benefits all of the students, whichever of the two partner languages is being addressed. So if we move on to curriculum and instruction, then what words, okay, because I've seen fabulous words for the program design, right? What about words that we might have for dual language curriculum and instruction? Can you go ahead and put those in the chat, and I'll continue debriefing as well. Okay, so in the guiding principles, the curriculum promotes and maintains equal status of both languages, promotes appreciation of multiculturalism and linguistic diversity, is culturally responsive, and represents the cultural and linguistic backgrounds of all students. So, and also we think of the fact, and I think it's especially true now in light of recent events in our country, that the curriculum should include an anti-bias curriculum. The curriculum should be taking a hard look at history and what has history from multiple perspectives taught us about circumstances today. And we also need to look at a curriculum that moves to social action. And I can't wait to get to that part of my presentation to give you some of the resources that's going to help us to do this in our schools. Okay, so instruction. We also, of course, have, and go ahead and put in the chat box, instruction. Where do we find sociocultural competence in instruction? You're putting it in the chat box. What's in the guiding principles? Well, in the guiding principles, teachers are using and promoting sheltered instruction. We're reaching all kids. Teachers have a mindset that all children can learn. And guess what? Also, that all children deserve to learn. I'm sorry, but I've been in places where it looks like some children, in the opinion of some adults in the school, they believe that the children don't deserve to learn even, okay? We need a variety of strategies so that everyone is included, right? Not only a few kids are called upon all the time. And we're looking at strategies to promote competence in the students themselves, right? As well as in the staff. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then awareness of language variation. There is not one best variety of language. That just doesn't exist. There isn't only one proper form. There may be a form of academic language we use in school, but let us endorse and applaud and celebrate the languages of the students that the students may speak at home, right? All of these things actually are in the guiding principles, right? Okay, now we're on to assessment. I love it. Look at everyone who's contributing to the conversation. What word or phrase comes to mind when you hear sociocultural competence and dual language assessment? Assessment in dual language. Okay, well, some of the things that we have in the guiding principles are achievement data are disaggregated by student and program variables. So we're looking at home language. We're looking at English learner status. We're looking at eligibility for free and reduced price lunches, right? Socioeconomic status. Why? Because we want to make sure all of the kids who come from all of those have those characteristics are achieving, right? We need to shed a light on the performance of all our students and share that with the wider community. And if there's not the success that there needs to be, we have to figure out why, and we have to make sure that we rectify, right? And often, and I believe, and I think there are others who may also believe, that sociocultural competence is the missing piece. We've been working on biliteracy and bilingualism and high academic achievement. The academics we've been working on, right? But we have not given due diligence to the sociocultural competence piece. Beatrice and I we're not spring chickens, and we've been working on this for a long, long time. And guess what? We think that the time is now. The time is now. When else would there be a time for the growth of dual language, for the growth of this understanding of sociocultural competence as a means to change, a means for badly needed change in our country. We cannot let this happen as what happened. We will grow students who would never do what was done in the Capitol building. We will grow students to understand, right? So, okay, I gotta get off my high horse here. But what else with assessments, formative and summative? Hey, referrals for individual education plans are made on the basis of assessment in both languages, not just one language. And let's do that carefully. We're not mistaking language differences with disability. Assessment is consistently conducted in 2 languages. Dr. Arias said that. Statistics on retention rates, placement, special ed, gifted and talented. Where are all of our children in there, right? And that data are communicated to all the stakeholders of the community about how our kids are doing. Okay, so words now. Words that have to do with staff quality and professional development. The fifth strand. Let's put them in the box. What does that look like for staff quality and professional development in dual language, sociocultural competence? Okay, well, new staff selection includes demonstrated commitment to program goals. We are hiring people with a certain belief system. We want them in our schools, or our young people who are willing to learn and are open-minded. Becoming culturally proficient is a journey. I remember when I first came out of school in my early 20s, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about being culturally proficient. It has been through education, and I'll tell you, experience with being with my Black and brown friends who have taught me more than any textbook or any class could what being culturally competent or proficient is, right? We have to be hiring teachers, bringing them up to speed so that they can serve as culturally proficient models for the children, right? The PD is planned, delivered with the goal of enhancing culturally sustaining instruction, and addresses equity, social justice, access. If our children learn best from the adults they see around them. They must be surrounded with adults that are culturally proficient and really get this, right? Okay, all right, next. The next is families and community. Sociocultural competence, GP3, families. What do we see if we're doing it right? What do we see? Okay, well, our professional development addresses equity, access, social justice, positive school climate, incorporates ongoing learning activities because our families need to understand, support, and advocate for our programs too. Programs plan, engage community activities, close relations, communication with families and community, is using the appropriate languages, my goodness. And we need to have our families engaged in the governance structures of our schools, right? Not just, coming to, yes, come and enjoy all of the performances of our kids, but our families must be included in governing the schools, in any conversation about starting the schools, dual language schools, they must be included. I love that we're building on everyone's knowledge in this, because this is a group, a community of people who are in this webinar who have an amazing understanding of what we need in our country today beyond dual language programs. If you're a supporter of dual language programs, you know what we need in our country today. And then finally, support and resources. Yes, okay, what do we need? Support and resources, put it in the box. Yes, I have a picture of a man with coins, right? Because yes, we do need the funding. We need the funding and we need the support. We need the school boards, we need the communities, we need our central offices to be up to speed so they don't begrudge us needing bilingual teachers and teachers who speak a language other than English, that they help us with that, right? That they help when there's a textbook adoption, that they automatically think of the languages other than English in which we need those materials, right? That they're going to pay for the professional development that our teachers need to teach in dual language programs, right? The equipment, etc. Okay, so now I've come quickly to the part I really want to talk about, and that's moving our curriculum beyond contributions and towards social action, resources for critical pedagogy. And we take from Paulo Freire. I mean, isn't he our hero? Isn't he somebody that we honor and respect and want to live out what he said in our education, right? And James Banks, one of the earliest scholars that contributed and is still alive today, I mean, he's still doing it, I'm sure, understood multicultural education. It's not contributions, it's not hanging pictures of people of different ethnicities on the walls of the hallways of the school about their accomplishments. That is not multicultural education. Ethnic additive, it's not studying the American Revolution and learning about a woman named Betsy Ross who designed a flag, or who probably, wasn't even true, I think, I don't know. And Crispus Attucks, who, it wasn't just about the added ethnic additive of these other than landed gentry, white men with land. So what is transformative? Let's move to transformative. It's studying the American Revolution and looking at the American Revolution from the perspective of women, of African Americans, from Native Americans, from people like Hamilton, from immigrants, right? And looking at history and everything around us from multiple perspectives. And then moving to decision-making and social action, understanding these things and moving to do something about it. Doing something about it and having our students engage in action, okay? So here are our resources, and I know I will be done in a minute, but know that these resources are in the handout as well. Southern Poverty Law Center, Teaching Tolerance. Oh my goodness, the array of free resources that you can get from them. They have so much, a free magazine and so many other free resources. Right now, they have a link to When Bad Things Are Happening, talking to children about what is happening today, right? they also have standards, social justice standards. Yes, we have standards that we can use. It's a framework for anti-bias education, includes anchor standards, age-appropriate learning outcomes, looks at identity, diversity, justice, and anxious. There's no reason not to be doing this, right? We've got this. Teaching for Change, I have been associated with them from the very earliest, when I first woke up, okay, in my 20s. Wonderful organization that also provides all kinds of free resources. Even, you know, I've just put up one teaching about Central America, but they have moved into providing information on social justice books that they have reviewed, so you don't have to. So you know when you pick up a book, it's not stereotyping children, okay? So topics include Arabs, Arab Americans, Latinx, Japanese internment, being an activist, etc. Zinn Education Project, which you can provide, look at the screen, time period, theme, resource type, grade level. Like this one, where are the climate change superheroes for grades 3 to 5? Systems thinking and climate activism. Deportations on trial, Mexican Americans during the Great Depression, right? It's there for you. These resources are there. You don't have to create everything from scratch. Although I'm just thinking, how many are these? Okay. Rethinking Schools, another organization. What do we have to push for? Are they all in Spanish? You heard me mumble, like how many of these are in Spanish? Not enough, not enough. And then that's our advocacy piece, right? That's our advocacy piece. Getting these in Spanish, getting these organizations to produce these in Spanish and other languages that might be needed. Rethinking Schools. I love Debbie Reese. You might be familiar with her. Native American who reviews children's literature about Native Americans and has certain books that she says you don't need to have in your classroom, like Little House on the Prairie, which does not accurately represent Native Americans, right? And yet there are beautiful books like this one, these ones that I have on the screen, about the experience of children being put in boarding schools, right? Just let me go to the next one. We also have resources from Cal. I've written something, Guiding Principles in the Critical Third Pillar, which is up on the Dual Language Schools site. They invited me to write something. So the things I've talked about here are in that article. And I tell you again, and I think that Leticia has put it into the chat, I had a handout which includes all of these resources for you to go ahead and just click right into them. Okay, all righty. So we don't have time for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Doctors Tabaku and Arias. Unfortunately, we are not going to have time for the Q&A portion today. Did you have any other final closing remarks before I close this out?
I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, I feel so, I hope, I get pretty passionate about this, but it energizes me to see all of the hundreds of people that are looking at this, because this is where we want to go and this is what we want to do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Beatrice, do you want to say something?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to everybody who's been here today so that we could share this with you. I guess my main concern now is that the next avenue for advocacy has to be teacher preparation. We have to develop teacher preparation programs that make teachers socioculturally competent as a goal, rather than not. And so that would be my next advocacy area. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Well,
everybody.
just to reiterate, the recording will be available after the webinar if you fill out a survey that you received from duallanguageschools.org. And I would also like to announce the virtual Book of the Month discussion group, which we will be hosting every 3 months with a book chat. Our current book is the Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education, the 3rd edition. You can access the Facebook group in the email that will also contain the survey to access the recording. And we will also be sending out further information about different resources on duallanguageschools.org, such as registering your school on the national directory and subscribing to our newsletter. Thank you again for attending the webinar. We greatly appreciate your time, and we'd love to have you unmute and say goodbye and just say what you thought briefly about the webinar.